for respect all across the country.
8, open 5, 6, 7, done.
Ready? Okay. Is cheerleading a sport?
Yes, I most definitely think cheerleading is a sport.
Not according to a federal judge. Shut up! Over the summer, a Connecticut judge ruled that cheerleading is not a sport.
5, 6, 7, 8.
It all started when Quinnipiac University tried to replace their volleyball team with a competitive cheerleading squad. The volleyball team sued, saying that cheerleading did not meet the guidelines of Title IX. And the judge agreed, saying that competitive cheerleading is still too underdeveloped and disorganized to be treated as offering genuine varsity athletic participation opportunities for students.
You have to do jumps and stunts, and they're very dangerous, just like sports. You could drop a girl, she could break her leg, her ankle. We work out just as much as the football players, and we like lift people, so I think it is a sport.
And in the Fox show Glee, Cheerios get all the attention, the money, and the awards. But even Sue Sylvester can't change the mind of a federal judge. Or could she? So what do you think? Is cheerleading a sport? Yeah, so is it just pretty girls in short skirts, or are they actually really working hard and doing some hard workouts, and is it really a sport? Well, the federal ruling is now affecting universities all across the country with competitive cheerleading teams. They are talking about what that judge says and addressing those concerns to become recognized as a sport to all. Fox 7's Camille Williams live from Baylor University with the story. Camille.
That's right, Loriana. And Baylor University, it's the only Division I university in Texas with a competitive cheerleading team. They're going to tell us about some of the changes they're making to be recognized as a sport. But first, what do you think? Do you think cheerleading is even really a sport?
5, 6, 7, dip.
I would consider it a sport.
I don't know. I just think it's so girly and not athletic and whatever.
As a whole, I don't see it as a sport.
Cheerleading, is it a sport? It's a question many ask and debate over. For these girls,
Good timing.
the answer is simple, yes.
1, 2, 3, 4. Good.
Brad Page is the owner of Cheer Station.
Oh, I think the question's answered. These kids are athletes. This is a sport.
Page, a former competitive cheerleader and Baylor University graduate, opened his gym in North Austin more than 20 years ago.
Push up harder. Big points off for falling. You realize that.
He says cheerleading takes hard work and dedication.
You know, these athletes train hard. They're strong. They're flexible. They work out. The condition takes a lot of gymnastics and acrobatics.
It's not a sport.
Shocking words to hear from Allison Chapa, who's a University of Texas cheerleader.
All cheerleaders are athletes, but like you said, there are some cheerleading teams that don't compete and some teams that do compete. So the ones that do compete is definitely considered a sport.
Cheerleading might always be debated on whether it's a sport. Allison says here at Cheer Station, they're competing, so she says it's a sport. A sport that she says requires a lot of training.
I'd start my warm-up, run like 2 miles, and then the treadmill, and we do like different types of sprints. Just like a sprint workout for a good like 30 to 45 minutes.
Those workouts don't come without some pain. Orthopedic Dr. Michael Burris says every month he sees at least one patient with injuries from cheerleading.
Just like you see in other sports like soccer and football, you have ACL tears of the knee, you get broken bones, you certainly get some elbow ligament injuries, shoulder injuries, things like that.
Even with the injuries and competitions, not everyone agrees it's a sport.
I don't think it's a sport.
You don't think it's a sport? Very good.
I think it's a recreational activity. You probably work more in cheerleading and get hurt more in cheerleading, from what I know, from other people's experiences, than most sports.
I don't, but my sister does. I was an athlete. She's been a cheerleader her whole life, and she'd be really mad if I said no, but it's not a sport.
I think if you're out doing something besides sitting on the couch, being lazy, then you know what, you can call yourself an athlete and you're doing some sort of sport.
Baylor is one of 6 schools in the country with a competitive cheer team. Earlier today, I spoke with the cheer coach and a cheerleader about how the ruling in Connecticut affects them. Cheerleading is extremely dangerous, and clearly you have gotten injured while cheerleading. Tell us what you were doing.
I was actually spotting another girl, so I wasn't doing a flip myself or anything, and she jumped away from me, so I pushed her over and fell on my elbow, which pulled my shoulder out to the back. I got an MRI and found out that I tore my labrum 300 degrees around, and it was really devastating because I wanted to be on this team, and I've worked so hard my entire life to get here, and I'm out all season, which is pretty bad, but this injury happens a lot in football and baseball and stuff, so even though it's cheerleading, it still has very devastating.
What are you guys doing from here after hearing about the ruling?
I think the ruling kind of laid out everything we needed to do here at Baylor and as an organization. Baylor's part of the NCATA, which is the National Collegiate Acrobatics and Tumbling Association. They have come together with 5 other universities to form this organization and get this sport to emerging status with the NCAA. This ruling kind of laid everything out for us as far as going through and making sure we were organized and we had everything in line. We were competing in the same format from competition to competition, meet to meet, officials, scoring, regulations, compliance, everything else that every other sport would do to make them be recognized as a sport.
And of course, this team hopes that one day they'll be recognized as a sport by everyone. Loriana.
Well, Camille, you know, I have to say that back in the day, I was a cheerleader. I also ran track and cross country, and I would say that those workouts were far harder. But I know times have changed, and it's good to see people getting off the couch. The big question is, as we've still been asking, if it's still a sport. And I know whatever side I take, I will offend somebody either way, but good story. Meantime, Title IX, this is the big issue, is the federal law. It was put in place to keep women from being discriminated against. But it can also work both ways for the underrepresented sport. To talk to us more about Title IX and how it relates to sports, Heather Rutland with Hensley Schwartz Law Firm joins us. And now, what do you think of this case? I mean, ultimately, let's go back to the original case where it was a volleyball team that was replaced by a competitive cheer squad. Where do you stand?
Well, under the ruling of the decision of the court, the way that that college had put together their competitive cheer squad, they did not qualify as a competitive sport for Title IX. They didn't have the certain things like a coach, a set season, a consistent practice schedule. They didn't have a budget that was managed by the athletic department. They didn't recruit off campus. There were a number of things that would be required under Title IX, specifically under some of the NCAA rules.
So there's a big, long list of criteria, I would imagine then, because a lot of these cheerleaders, you hear them say, hey, we work out year-round, we go and compete, and so I guess their big issue now is with their standards for Title IX.
That's correct. It has much less to do with how hard they work and how much they get injured and how athletic they are than with how organized they are. The governing body mentioned by the Baylor coach earlier is critical, and I think will be critical going forward to make sure that cheerleading is elevated to a place in Title IX.
Well, let me ask you this. Some would say, is Title IX even necessary? Why can't let a school support whatever sport they want to support, or whatever activity, I should say, at this point?
Well, historically, there's been a discrimination against women in athletics as in other areas. And Title IX is a federal law aimed at trying to equalize athletic opportunities for men and women. You look at the proportion, for example, of on-campus folks. 60% male, 40% women means 60% male in your athletics program and 40% women. So that's the critical issue, really.
We're out of time, but I do want to ask you real quick, Heather Rutland, is it a sport or not for you?
Depends on how it's organized.
Okay. Heather Rutland, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.